The fate of nearly 1 million people is at stake as the Supreme Court takes up DACA. In 2012, the Obama administration established DACA, short for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, as an executive action. DACA allows undocumented young adults who are brought to the United States as children to apply for protection against deportation. Since its creation, nearly 800,000 participants voluntarily underwent background and security checks, and in exchange, they can live, work, and study legally here in the U.S. Just 5 years later, the Trump administration announced their intention to end the DACA program. Joining me now, one of the authors of DACA, who is also involved in the case to block President Trump from ending it, former Secretary of Homeland Security, Janet Napolitano. Janet, thank you for joining us. What is at stake here, and why are you bringing this case?
What's at stake here are the lives of 700,000 to 800,000 young people who are all DACA recipients. DACA, as you described, is a program that allows them to enroll, to pass a background check. They have to be in school. They have to be in the military or productively employed. They get work authorization when they receive DACA, which is very important. So throughout the United States, we have these young people, very productive. We have some 1,700 of them at the University of California, where I currently serve as president. That's one of the reasons we brought this lawsuit.
I want to go through that because it's important to remind people who these participants are. Over 90% have a job, nearly half are currently in school, and many of these people don't even speak the language or the culture from their home countries that they could potentially get deported to. You've made the point that Dreamers are as American as those whose relatives arrived on the Mayflower. Can you expand on that?
Well, these are young people who have, as you described, grown up in the United States. The average DACA recipient was brought to the United States under the age of 6 years old. They've grown up here. They have done everything we ask of them. The ones who are at the University of California have succeeded academically enough to gain admittance to the University of California, which is not all that easy. So these are, as I said before, these are very energetic, constructive young people. They only know the United States as home. So to put them under the threat of deportation just seems wrong at so many levels.
Then did you ever think this could happen? You're one of the architects of DACA. And these young people came out of the shadows because they trusted the system and the program. And now there's a chance they get deported. Did you ever think this could happen? Do you feel guilty about it?
When we constructed DACA, we did it very carefully. We followed Supreme Court precedent about the authority of the executive branch to use the theory of what's called prosecutorial discretion in terms of how it prioritizes enforcement action. It's the same theory that underlies why the Department of Justice doesn't prosecute bad check cases. It prosecutes bank fraud cases. So we carefully built the program that way. Presidents going back to Eisenhower have deferred action on classes of immigrants. So we weren't setting any new precedent there. We achieved an opinion from the Office of Legal Counsel in the Department of Justice that the program was legal. So we carefully set it up, knowing that anything in the immigration realm could be subject to challenge, and we wanted to be as careful as we could.
So what are you going to do if the court decides they cannot make any determination on the legality of this program? What are you going to do?
Well, they can make a determination. That's what all the courts that have reviewed this challenge have concluded, that the administration based its decision on an incorrect belief about the legality of DACA. Questions of law are inherently reviewable by the courts. And because the administration here just got the law wrong, it renders their decision arbitrary and capricious under something called the Administrative Procedures Act.
How do you reconcile both sides of criticism that the Obama administration has gotten? On one hand, you got highly criticized for the high number of deportations between 2009 and 2016. Compare that to the president criticizing you and trying to end the DACA program, saying this was open border season and everybody showed up.
Yes. Well, I think in terms of President Obama's record, you have to look under the numbers in terms of who was being deported. And by the end of the administration, some 90% fell within established priorities. They had other serious felonies or a string of misdemeanors, or they'd been apprehended right at the border. But beyond that, President Obama was a strong advocate for comprehensive immigration reform. And we worked very hard on that with the Congress. A bipartisan bill, in fact, passed the Senate, only to go die in the House. But as we were, enforcing the law, we also recognized that bringing the immigration law, this out-of-date immigration law, to bear against young people who have grown up in this country seemed not legally required and just inconsistent with our values.
All right. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.